Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining our session today. We're going to be discussing Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud, all-in-one backup, BCDR, and cybersecurity for MSPs. I'm joined here by a good friend of ours, Stephen Nichols from Acronis, and we'll go ahead and jump into some introductions here. Stephen, if you want to start with yourself.
Sure. So my name is Stephen Nichols. I'm based in the Greater Toronto area. I've been with Acronis for almost 5 years, and certainly been in the industry far longer than I care to admit. The hair's getting a little gray, but at the same time, been working with Sherweb for quite a while as part of that, and super excited to talk about the breadth of the services that we can offer together through the platform.
Awesome, thank you. For those on the call that haven't met me yet, my name is Matt Chanfrani. I'm a product sales manager here with Sherweb, specifically focused around our business and continuity products. So it's my pleasure to work with our partners as well as our vendors to offer consultations around the continuity software and products that we sell and really help integrate these into our businesses. We can jump forward, Stephen, into the agenda, and then we'll take it off from there. Awesome. So what we're going to cover today, we just did the intros, but you guys know now what we look like. We're going to go over the importance of business continuity, talk a little bit about the current landscape, because if we look at the trends over the last 5 years, everything's moving extremely quickly when we talk about tech, when we talk about current threats that are out there, data loss, security problems, ransomware, natural disasters, everything is changing rapidly. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to go into why choose Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud. We're going to talk a bit about the platform itself, talk about backup versus BCDR and why backup alone is not enough. Talk about some of the cool security coverage and products that Acronis has developed in their platform. The Cyberfit partner program, which has a multitude of benefits for our partners, and we'll jump into some Q&A. If at any point you have a question, don't hesitate to pop it into that chat. I will politely interrupt Stephen as we go with some of those questions to keep the conversation flowing. But if we want, we can talk now about the importance of business continuity, go into some of the landscape trends that we're currently seeing. So there's 3 things here. These are scary numbers, scary facts, but it's the reality that we're currently living in. The average cost of downtime, according to a 2022 analysis, is $88,000 per hour, or $1,467 per minute. Naturally, that figure is going to be skewed by larger organizations reporting higher sums, but small and medium businesses are still significantly impacted by downtime. For example, I saw a case study in the auto sector, and the auto sector is one that gets hit by disaster, unfortunately, semi-often. The downtime could be as high as $22,000 per minute. Those are huge numbers. The frequency of cyber attacks is growing significantly year over year. The cost of cybercrime hit $8 trillion in 2023. Now, I know we're only a few months away from 2025, so hopefully this number doesn't scare you too much, but it's expected to hit $10.5 trillion by 2025. It's never been more important to look and sit back and say, we need a strategy, we need a BCDR, we need a backup strategy, we need a cybersecurity strategy. And we're also seeing the market shift. We're shifting towards cloud-based SaaS. And 70% of apps used by organizations are now cloud-based. Some people are of the perception that because your data is in the cloud, because your M365 data or your other SaaS application is sitting in someone else's data center, that you're protected. And this is not always the reality. In fact, Stephen has an excellent slide in just a few slides that he's going to hit on that talks about a shared responsibility model that's really important for all of us to really understand and position to our clients, to our partners, to everyone that we're doing business with day to day. So what we'll do is we'll move over here into the next slide, and we're going to talk a little bit about Acronis as a business. I'll pass that to Stephen. I'm still here. I'll interrupt with any questions that they come along, but take it away.
Awesome. Thanks for that, setting the stage a little bit there for us. So just in case anyone doesn't know who Acronis is, we've been around for a little over 20 years. We were founded in Singapore, and we currently have our corporate headquarters in Switzerland. We have over 1,800 employees. We truly are a global company. We operate in all around the world. And really, from a cybersecurity point of view, we started in data protection. We recognize that the biggest threats to data in the modern landscape is ransomware. And as a result, we expanded the platform to cover cybersecurity. And in 2023, we were able to stop almost 200 million threats and over 60 million malicious emails. We are definitely a channel company. We work with about 20,000 service provider partners across the globe that represent close to 1 million business customers, certainly. And on top of that, we do actually run our own data centers, and we have 54 of them across the globe, more specifically 2 of them in Canada, 1 in Toronto and 1 in Vancouver, as well as multiples in both the East and West Coast of the United States. And as I was saying, for the threats to data, the threats to business continuity, historically, when we look back, it was, natural disasters were a huge risk. Certainly, we as an industry have become much better at both predicting and managing those threats, and now they really only account for a few percentages of the actual downtime. Certainly things like the pandemic that we had a few years ago absolutely impacted the way people do business and where those risks are. Hardware failure, software corruption, accidental deletion of data, those are all things for sure that, from a backup, from a BDR point of view, business continuity, there's still important things you need to be prepared to deal with. But by and large, the biggest threat is cyber attacks, whether that's ransomware, whether it's identity theft, whether it's phishing. It is the number of those attacks continues to climb and grow. So when we talk about disaster recovery, it's not just about being able to have access to your data. It's about having timely access to your data. It's about being able to continue to operate your business. So when there is a cyber attack or there's some kind of outage, the assumption is going to be by your clients that you did something wrong, and particularly that tends to accelerate the longer you're offline and unable to actually transact. So being able to have a good BDR solution, having something where you can maintain the business continuity for those line of business applications is super important. So it can lead to lower downtime. It can also really minimize the complexity because you have especially if you're using that platform for being able to back up that data, being able to use that same platform for business continuity makes a lot of sense. And as an MSP, it also means you can deliver more value. You can actually provide the proper level of protection for your clients. And all of those things go together to help you to grow your revenue as well. So kind of, how things work, in overall, you have the customer site, right? You have your physical servers, the virtual servers, the applications that are running on that, like SQL. We have the ability to run both recovery and primary servers in the cloud. As well, that means we have both hot and cold storage. And it also means that we can do things like production failovers, test failovers, and making sure that all those cloud servers are properly backed up. We can provide that continuity. If you have a partial failure, we can actually extend your environment into the cloud. And we can also then fail back to your local customer site. So it's an all-in-one solution that really gives you peace of mind and make sure that you can maintain things online. Because the longer that business is offline, the bigger the impact is to their reputation, as well as the likelihood that people are going to go and find somewhere else to get that service or that product. So why choose Acronis? So first of all, it's really about making sure that the solution that you have as an MSP is one that you can cost effectively use, one that is built from the ground up for MSPs, and that gives you the native protection, the integration between your RMM and PSA tool, the integration between backup and cybersecurity. And it's all about making sure that you have that data properly protected, and you're able to access that in a way that your technicians don't have to learn a large number of different tools and move around from tool to tool. So really, we can bring an all-in-one security solution with a multi-layered approach. So this is really about proactively being able to know when there is a threat, right? Those early indicators of compromise, making sure again with a single agent. So having security and management and backup and disaster recovery, people use that same agent for all of those. Reduces the conflict, but also increases the performance of the actual machine. We've got really well proven technology. We've been in the industry for 20 years. We've been working on our security solution since about 2015, and we also, by having simple tools, making it easier for the MSP to manage all of that in a friendly environment that's intuitive, having policies that can be applied across the board, really makes it an effective tool against those advanced threats. So Matt earlier talked about the shared responsibility model. I think this is really important. And we know that a lot of MSPs, one of the core vendors that you guys are working with is Microsoft, right? So almost every business today in some way uses the Microsoft suite. And particularly when you're talking about 365 and cloud services, it's important to understand who is responsible for what in that model. So Microsoft is responsible for the global infrastructure, the security of that infrastructure itself, and about processing the data. So they make sure that their solution is compliant with things like HIPAA, PCI compliance, things like that. They make sure that the physical data center is properly secured, that there's redundancies in place, and that they help control the actual access to that. They're obviously also providing the application layer redundancy, as well as making sure that there's protection against short-term data loss with things like the recycle bin. What's your responsibility? And when we say your responsibility, that could be you as the MSP, it could be the end customer, but basically the responsibility that doesn't lie with Microsoft. So access and control of your data. So it's still your responsibility as the MSP to secure that application, right? Harden the 365, make sure multi-factor is enforced, make sure that that data is backed up, and make sure that you have a plan in place for both short-term and long-term data retention. So whether that's a short-term around just being able to, if there's an accidental deletion, or if there's a ransomware attack and that level of security, you need to be prepared to handle all of those things, as well as phishing emails. You need to be protected. That's your responsibility. And as the data owner, you need to make sure that any of the policies and processes and tools that you're using will support the compliance with both corporate and industry regulations, as well as any legal compliance that you have. So there is quite a bit that Microsoft does deliver. Again, they make sure mail gets delivered. They make sure that the infrastructure is available and secure. But there's also a lot that still needs to be done to add on. Microsoft 365 on its own, without any additional configuration and protection, isn't going to get you to where you need to go. So basically, from a data protection point of view, it's about accidental deletion, slow recovery, and limited retention. So with Acronis, we can actually back that entire thing up. We can back up Teams, SharePoint, the mailbox, OneDrive, everything you need in order to make sure that you have including unlimited retention and being able to do granular recovery. From a security point of view, really it's protecting against both malicious insiders as well as phishing and ransomware. So with things like immutable storage, ransomware protection, and encryption, as well as making sure that multi-factor is turned on for For Acronis, it can allow you a much more secure environment. And then from a compliance point of view, certainly having transparent reporting, as well as our audit log, and having data centers spread around the world, you can make sure that that data stays in country. So it's certainly something that, as an MSP, you can really help to close those risks and those security gaps with using Acronis. Let's talk about a little bit the differences between backup and BCDR, and why just doing a backup alone isn't generally going to protect you. So really, it's about first of all downtime, right? It's the speed of recovery. When you have backups, you need to then transport that data. So certainly, if you have local backups, you can restore those quicker than cloud backups. But the challenge is really making sure that if you had corruption of those local backups, a lot of times threat actors are going to target those local backups as well as the primary data itself. So making sure that you have that speed of recovery, having the ability to have that business continuity. So instead of taking hours or days to download large amounts of data over the internet, you're able to spin those workloads up in a matter of minutes and maintain that business continuity, and then do that download while that workload is actually up, while you're able to use that application. The other thing you got to think about is the data integrity. So, when you are just doing backups, it's easy to end up with, it's been a long time since we've done a backup, right? Something is failing. So having a full disaster recovery plan will include things like data validation, making sure that not only can you restore that data, but it's usable in real life scenarios. So being able to do things like test failovers, being able to go through on a regular basis and validate that, in a disaster, do you have everything that you need? Are all the right systems protected? Huge difference. If you think about it, kind of in an analogy point of view, the reason that we do fire drills to evacuate buildings when it's not on fire is so that we can identify, are there any bottlenecks, are there any challenges, are there areas that aren't, where process isn't working. Same thing is important in a disaster recovery plan. They need to be tested and valid. And the last kind of thing you need to think about is kind of managing those risks. So when you just talk about data loss, right, whether that's from data becoming corrupted, whether it's from data that's being encrypted in a ransomware attack, could be even just hardware failure. In order to mitigate those risks, it's important to have a business continuity plan and strategy to manage all of those risks, so that it's not just about getting the data back, it's about maintaining the functionality of the business. So as we've kind of talked about, certainly protecting the data, being able to make sure you have access to it, make sure you have that business continuity. We know the biggest threat these days is coming from threat actors, it's coming from ransomware attacks. And so let's talk a little bit about some of the additional benefits that you can leverage with Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud around being able to actually provide you security. So we know that because of the use of things like AI, we're seeing almost 300,000 new malware samples a day. So it's astronomical how quickly that those samples can get rolled out. And the average lifespan is it's about 1.7 days now, the average lifespan of ransomware. And the reason is we're getting pretty good at being able to detect those. We being the security industry as a whole, we're pretty good at being able to identify and detect those threats. But those new and novel threats that are coming out on a regular basis in a very high volume means any traditional solution that you're relying on, which is definition-based, it can take more than 2 days for those definitions to actually catch up. And by that point, there's been hundreds of thousands of new threats that have come out. So we know from the threat landscape that when we look historically, it was really about creating a fortress. It was about creating a perimeter around the business, and then being very careful with what got inside that perimeter. With the advent of bring your own device and work from home, we know that that is now not really the strategy that's going to work. Many of those devices need to be outside of that perimeter. In a lot of cases, to access privileged resources, things like VPNs are being used. But we know that there's a large amount of things which are moving to SaaS. And the threat actors know the same thing. What they're looking for is the valuable information that they want in order to be able to make sure that you're going to pay the ransom. That's now living in SaaS applications. And so really the perimeter has moved even beyond the endpoint. It's really now about credentials. It's about phishing attacks. It's about being able to get access to that information. And almost half of the breaches now include compromised credentials. So a lot of that is coming from phishing emails, or it could come from reused credentials. We still have customers out there. There's still end users that will use the same credentials, the same password between personal and business even. And huge risk, which is why it's important to make sure that you are working with your customers to create a culture of security. We also know that it takes a long time, over 2 months often, to contain a breach. Threat actors have become quite good at getting access, maintaining access for a long time. They're very slow to exfiltrate data. They're trying not to get detected. So by the time files are getting encrypted, that's a very late stage attack. We've also, in the first half of this year, we've seen almost 300% increase in the number of email attacks. And the reason is, it is one of the generally weakest points in a business organization. It's the easiest way to get something inside an organization. And on top of that, we know that the vast majority, over 90%, that's how it starts. So it could be something that's a business email compromise, where someone is impersonating someone else in your organization, impersonating the CEO, saying, I need gift cards. Or it could be, impersonating the IT department and saying, oh, we have some old laptops that we're going to sell to employees. Click here to see the list. And then it's going to prompt you for your credentials but it's not actually on a Microsoft site. So there's a number of different types of attacks. And almost all, 80% of the security incidents actually involve a phishing attack of some kind. We also, the other thing that we're hearing from the industry as a whole, not just MSPs, but the security leaders as a whole, is the number of tools that are being used. There's sort of this trend that goes back and forth between having very specific bespoke tools that solve a very specific problem, and having a more general purpose tool that will solve many problems. And we're really seeing that without a common view across applications, across different areas within the security, is becoming a challenge for that visibility, for being able to rapidly react. It also makes it more complicated to train new analysts as they're coming on board. And as a result, lots of security leaders are actually looking at consolidating their security platforms, reducing the number of applications that they're using, because that actually is going to increase their security posture. So one of the things that I certainly think is really important as an MSP when you're thinking about security and when you're talking about security with your customers is it shouldn't be about hey, here's a piece of software that's going to solve your problem. You just need to buy a subscription to this, and and pay me this money, and everything's going to be fine. So one of the things, you really need to create a culture of security in your customers. One of the ways that a lot of the MSPs that I work with have been successful in doing that is by leveraging frameworks. So you can use CIS controls. You can use, there's a number of different things you can use. The one that I happen to like, it resonates with me, is the cybersecurity framework from NIST. It was just updated earlier this year to add in a lot more information. When it first came out, it was really about critical infrastructure and had a very like US focus. In the latest iteration that came out this year, they brought in security experts from many countries around the world, including Canada, to contribute to that from both a regulatory point of view as well as a kind of a guidance point of view, what kind of recommendations. And they've also added in the pillar for govern, which is really about making sure that you have overarching policies in place. And making sure that you have information and you know what's going on, and you really have everything that is within your area, even if it's not at 100% of where you'd like it to be. You should be aware of that. The suite from Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud can help in multiple areas. So basically, what we're looking at, identify, that's the first kind of step. That's where you need to know what's going on. What do you know all of the devices? Do you so things like device sense that we have to be able to identify within a network all of the unprotected devices. It's about making sure that your content is discoverable. So it's really about making sure that there aren't any unknowns in your environment. From a protect point of view, it's making sure you have easy tools to across the board apply patches. You can lock down devices. You're providing security awareness training and creating that culture of security with each person in the organization, as well as making sure you can maintain proper configurations and know that you're checking all of those boxes. When, and not if, but when an attack happens, even if it's not successful, it's still an attack. You want early detection, so you need to rely on not just traditional definition-based attacks. You need to have behavior-based exploit prevention, ideally leveraging AI and machine learning. You need absolutely a must-have is email security. You need to have you need to harden and make sure that that most vulnerable vector you're protecting against. And then if it actually does create an incident, you need to have tools to respond. You need to be able to easily investigate, do the analysis, remediate things, not just at the individual file level, but at the workload level itself. Being able to do things like isolate that workload so that if someone has access to it, they can't continue to gain access to information. It's also about being able to access those workloads, even if they're isolated, so that you can do that investigation, and then ultimately being able to recover. And that recover can, includes things like disaster recovery being integrated so that you can easily fail over to the cloud. One thing I think a lot of people forget about is, if there's been a ransomware attack, if you're going to have law enforcement or insurance involved, those devices are technically crime scenes. So you can't just go and overwrite those and recover them. So having disaster recovery so that you can maintain business continuity, super important. The other thing is, if you are going to recover multiple devices, having things like or one-click mass recovery means that IT doesn't become the bottleneck if there's a large number of devices that need to be recovered. By using a framework, it allows you, when you're having those discussions with your customers, to talk about security posture, talk about kind of an ideal scenario, and be able to do kind of an audit of where they are today. And then you can come up with a plan as to how we're going to close the gaps. So how, as the MSP, together with the tools that you have, how you can help to close those gaps. So instead of it being a conversation about you should buy this, it's in order for you to qualify for a better insurance rate, in order for you to make sure you're properly protected, you have to have certain things in place. Some of those are about software, some of those are about policy, some of them are about training and culture of the organization, and frameworks allow you to do that. And then it helps to transfer that conversation to being one about risk, as opposed to one about, oh, I can't afford or I don't have money to pay for this other thing that you're trying to get me to use. So I talked a little bit about some of the NIST. I mean, I want to kind of now talk about some examples. So when we talk about that identify, device sense allows you to, by having a single agent installed in an environment, be able to either run active or passive scans on that environment. Now you can set rules, for example, you have to have at least 3 agents in the environment so that, when someone logs in at a coffee shop, it's not going to scan things. But within the environment, often there might be devices which people may not even be aware of. Some virtual machines. It could be some other server that's running somewhere that may not be properly protected. So being able to very quickly pull that information, and from that be able to deploy the agents, the Acronis agent, onto those devices, can make it a very easy way to make sure that you're getting that proper protection. And then we do know, for example, over time, the complexity of attacks has evolved. So attacks that a few years ago would have been only perpetrated by, nation states against other nation states, are now, we're starting to see those things like living off the land, fileless attacks, advanced persistent threats starting to become much easier, through ransomware as a service, for example. So known ransomware still exists. You still have to have those definition-based. There's a large number of those attacks, but they're very easy to stop as long as you've got some kind of tools, particularly next generation tools that can pick up behavior analysis as well. When we start to get into variants, exploit kits, things like polymorphic attacks, things like that, you start to make sure that patches are applied. But again, as those get more complex, the frequency of them may go down, but the ability to be able to detect and respond to those requires more advanced tools. So as opposed to traditional antivirus or even next gen, which looks more at the process, it looks more at the vulnerability, and the remediation is things like blocking processes, quarantining files, but it doesn't look at it in a holistic way. It doesn't look at where was the vulnerability, how did they get in, where were the privileges escalated, what scripts are run. That incident-based understanding is really where EDR shines. It's certainly still dependent on a lot of those antivirus, anti-malware tools in order to do the detection and the proactive response. But having a full EDR solution is going to provide a lot more protection for those endpoints. On top of that, it's sort of becoming the de facto requirement that a lot of cyber insurance companies are requiring, is to have EDR in place. So EDR from Acronis, certainly there's some really interesting value props. First of all, it allows you to very easily identify. We have all of the details of the attack stages. You can see, what files were involved, what time they happened. You can go in and see the entire, MITRE data, and understand how long it took, what did they do. But on top of that, whether you're a security analyst or whether you're just a technician that's doing, first level triage, having the attack summary. So what we do is we take that, all of that attack stages, all that information, and we feed that into a secure version of ChatGPT-4, and that allows us to create an attack technique, an attack summary in human readable language. So I often refer to this as the too long did not read version of the attack. Can really help you to know where to focus in on that investigation. Also can be really useful when explaining those attacks to an end customer. So makes it really easy to be able to start with that. And that's going to save you time and money. The other thing that we know is that time is super critical when you have an incident. So being able to have automated response playbooks means that you can automate those responses. You can say, hey, if this is the type of attack, if this is the scenario, if these are the triggers, we want to make sure that we stop the process. We want to make sure we isolate that workload. And what this allows you to do is gives you time to then do the investigation, but you're going to contain that threat so it doesn't continue to spread throughout the organization. It also makes you much more efficient because of being able to use automation. Automation also comes in via scripting. So we have the ability, the same agent that is doing the security and the backup, we can also securely run scripts on the endpoint, whether that's for detection, right? If we're actually trying to investigate an incident, we can run a script to gather information. You can also use it to remediate. You can make it, for example, maybe you need to change firewall rules, or you want to uninstall a particular piece of software that's been installed. Also have the ability to use AI to be able to modify those scripts or even to create those scripts. So it's really about making it as easy as possible to automate those mundane tasks. And we even have the ability to take regular actions and things like cleaning cache or clearing DNS. You can also, with advanced monitoring, be able to say, oh, if the CPU usage goes above a certain point, trigger something that's going to restart a process. And those type of alerts, being able to use machine learning based alerts where we can set, instead of setting thresholds, be able to set the anomalies and use that machine learning, makes it much more accurate. You're not getting a whole bunch of false positives, but you're also not missing things that might be a concern. And with that, I'm going to pause there for 2 seconds, and I'm just going to switch my screen over to we'll take a look at the Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud in a live demo, and we'll take a look at kind of what it looks like in real time. So I'm just going to finish logging in here, enter my two-factor authentication. Perfect. So this is the Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud, and let's talk a little bit about kind of how things work. First of all, in our demo environment, we've got a few different clients that are set up. Adding new clients is very straightforward. There's either a wizard you can go through and be able to add a new client that way, or we can go into the integrations and we can set up an integration with an RMM or PSA tool and automatically map your clients and create tenants in Acronis. We know that reporting is super important. So we do actually have both billing reports, which will give you all the usage, but we also have operational reports. So you can actually create something like a backup status report for all of your customers. And then you can even going into the settings and you can schedule this to be sent on a regular basis, whether you wanted that to be maybe sent out every weekday morning at 8 a.m. It will give you the reoccurring of the last 7 days so that you can very quickly check on the status of things. One of the other things we have in reporting is something we call the executive summary report. This is really useful when you're having either QBRs or kind of level setting conversations with your customer where you can show what value you bring by being able to show how many threats you've stopped. And these are all widget based. So if you want to add additional widgets, there are multiple widgets that can be added in to build that report out to make sure you're showing the information that's going to be valuable to the conversation. Now, most of what we're going to talk about today is going to be in the protection console. So we're going to log in here on behalf of our AAA designs into the protection console. And let's take a look at a couple of things. We're going to start by looking at this dashboard. So again, those same widgets that are used for reporting can be used to build out this dashboard. So being a very modular system, if you're just using backup and DR, you don't have to have things like your protection status. But at the same time, if whatever you're taking advantage of, you can have it exposed here, so you can very quickly get a picture of things. Certainly, we have the alerts view, which is going to show you anything, where something requires your attention. So whether it's critical warnings or just informational. So we have for example, an incident detected, which is critical. We can go in here, and right from here, it will take us, we can go into the investigate incident, and we can see what's going on in this incident. So if we look here, we can see the MITRE data, we can see the device, it gives us some information. I can take a look at my response actions. So again, that cyber scripting that we talked about to be able to respond via script. I could run a forensic backup if I wanted to, in order to gather a bunch of information about that device to help me and aid me in my investigation. I could fail it over from a disaster recovery point of view. I can also go in and manage the network isolation. So if I wanted to isolate that device, I can also isolate and run a backup. There's a number of things that I can actually do. I will have different actions. So if we go down here, we can see these are the scripts that we're running. So we'll notice we do still have some response actions, but in this case, we've actually already executed a quarantine, but we could even go as far as to delete that if we wanted to. We have our explanation here, that attack summary in plain language, which gives it a nice explanation. And as well, I can also see here the full details of that attack summary, including the actual the code that was run, when it was run. And then if I want, I can go into the remediate entire incident. And this is going to give me an ability to go through a bunch of steps and look at it, a remediation at incident level, as opposed to just looking at the individual parts of that incident. I can go back to my incident list here. And then let's take a look at devices. So if we take a look at our devices, the first thing we're going to notice is up at the top here, we have our add button. So if I want to go in and add, I can download the agent, including, if I want to download an agent for VMware or Hyper-V, those can be installed at the hypervisor level. So for Synology NAS, for example, same thing. If you're running Microsoft Azure virtual machines in the cloud, we can protect those as well in an agentless way. Or 365, this is where you'd enter in your admin credentials and create an API user. For any of the local workloads, you can also configure that by your RMM tool, so you can push the agent out to that particular tool. But once we have an agent installed, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to apply a plan or policy. We call it protection plan. So if I want to protect that device, so I have a couple of plans already assigned, but I can add another plan onto this device. It's going to go through and look at all of my plans that I have created in the environment. It's going to check for compatibility with that device and then give me the ability to apply those plans. If I go down to management, I can actually see a list of all of my plans, and we can also create a new one. So within each plan, there is for each section, so for backup, endpoint protection, antivirus, there's these large toggle switches. And that's how we have a modular system. And the portions of the agent actually aren't installed until you turn on a plan that has that. So the antivirus, anti-malware components would only be installed if I apply a plan with those enabled. And then within each area, I do have an ability to go in and configure the settings for each of those. So these overall policies give me quite a bit of control, and it's very simple to apply multiple settings, whether those are for backup, disaster recovery, antivirus, anti-malware, EDR, all of those things can be controlled from a single plan. Very quickly, I also want to talk about email security and security awareness training. So these are two more areas that are part of that puzzle of making sure that things are properly protected. And with that, I'm going to switch back over to our PowerPoint presentation, and we're going to continue with a few more slides where we're going to talk about, first of all, the partner program. So we really want to partner with service providers, right? We recognize that it's about empowering you to be successful. So we have a nice modular approach, making it very easy for you to once you have the agent installed, to turn up those additional services. This means that you can bring high value, high margin services to your clients, whether those are small business up to medium or even enterprise. It really gives you a lot of control over what your cost is, as well as being able to have really good management of that. And it was part of the Cyberfit partner program. There's a whole bunch of through partner marketing and sales support that you get. So those could be email campaigns, they can be training, they can be assets that you can leverage, access to NFR licenses so you can set up your own demo environments. And ultimately, it's really about having a single agent, a single policy from a single console with a single license from a single vendor. And that really makes, I've always said, you should have 3 to 5 strategic partners that you work with from a vendor point of view. Microsoft is probably going to be one of those. Sherweb, your distributor is probably one of those. Acronis would really like to be another one of those.
And I'll commend you guys at Acronis for that tagline there: one policy, one agent, one console. As you mentioned earlier in the presentation, with 90% of security executives looking to consolidate things into one console, this is a great opportunity to really accomplish that. And as we looked at the demo, we saw a lot of that human readability effort that you guys put into the product too, with like the GPT-4 summaries for some security incidents. It really allows you to communicate what you guys as MSPs and partners are doing for your end customers back to that end customer, right? There's always that old joke that the end customer only ever contacts you when something is burning down. But if you're communicating with them proactively, showing, there were X amount of attempts against your environment, this is how we remediated them, that's showing value. And that's something that this platform can really help you out with.
Excellent. Thanks for jumping in there. I won't go into a lot of detail, but we've been really effective at leveraging some of our relationships in the sports arena to really help MSPs that want to aggressively grow. We have a program called Team Up, which is where we bring together teams and an MSP to be the delivery partner with the Acronis solution, where you are actually the MSP to the team. You've got to be really interested in growing aggressively in order for a Team Up to work. But we also added Sports Ignite. So even if you're just looking at, you want to run maybe 1 or 2 events, if that's something that's interesting, you can certainly reach out to the folks at Sherweb. They can, either give you a quick synopsis, or they can bring in one of the folks from Acronis to talk about it. But if you're looking at growing aggressively, again, it's another example of how we're really trying to be, a way for MSP partners to really grow their business. And then I'm going to turn things over to Matt for a second to talk about how Sherweb can also support you in that whole situation.
Awesome. So on top of being able to help you purchase Acronis, we have a bunch of value-added services on top of what we do. So we offer business continuity portfolio consultations. What this means is that we'll talk to you about what your current backup and BCDR stack, your security stacks look like, help you navigate the ecosystem that's out there, help you try and figure out where certain things will fit, where the building blocks can go in place, and show you where a platform like Acronis Cyber Protect can really provide you additional value, both to you and your end customers. We also have a comprehensive pre-sales team here that can help you develop your sales and marketing strategies, right? So if you come to us and you say, I really want to sell this product, but I'm really not sure how to quote it, how to scope it, how to position it with our end customers, we can help you out with that. And we do that on a daily basis, taking what you guys want to position, helping you deliver that. In terms of dealing with Acronis specifically, we've been doing so for over 10 years. We've got petabytes of storage since the introduction of the product in 2015, and we're currently supporting over 1,000 partners on the Acronis platform. If we flip to the next slide there, I want to highlight some contact information. So there's my contact information. My email address is there. Noak as well, she's a pre-sales specialist on our business continuity side. She's able to help support you and your teams in terms of navigating what we can do, providing any type of information. Numbers, doesn't matter, everything we can do. So don't hesitate to write down our emails. And if we actually go to the next slide before we jump into any Q&A, we also have some additional information here for you. So we have some email addresses for our product department. Our support and partner sales department is there as well. With that said, if anyone has any additional questions that they want to pop into the chat, please feel free to do so. If you don't want us addressing it live on today's call, you can email any of us and I'll circulate it back and forth between Stephen and the team and get back to you. All right. Looks like we are pretty good at explaining things then, Stephen.
Excellent. I certainly hope it's that's the reason, and that we don't have any questions. But at the same time, as you said, if anyone's got any, comes up with something, after the webinar, they can certainly reach out, and we'll do our best to answer those questions.
Absolutely. I want to thank you, Stephen, and the entire Acronis team for their support today through this webinar. I hope that our attendees found it engaging. I look forward to having conversations with many of you in the next coming weeks.